Indiana Jones and the Fate of Atlantis. I didn't get to play this until maybe 5, 10 years after it came out. Came out in 1992, and then it was re-released a year later with a talkie version, since stuff like CD-ROMs were starting to become the trend and all that. And this was actually a very fun adventure. Now, it's set after The Last Crusade. You have to look that up to figure out the dates. And one of the enjoyable things about this game was that the opening actually plays out as part of the game. I mean, you can't save during the opening, but you start by searching the college's lost, collections all stored away for a particular little statue. And what ends up happening? And see, you don't know it at the time, but the person who asked you to find this little statue is actually part of the Third Reich. The Third Reich. And they are searching for Atlantis. Now, at this time, there is, as there is now, there's still debate if Atlantis really existed or not. But you find out that they may want it for military purposes. I mean, you have beads of orichalcum, which is supposed to be a great and powerful energy source. And now you have to figure out where to find Atlantis before they do. Well, it turns out that one person may have some ideas. In fact, they were a former, could say student, could say assistant to Indiana Jones, named Sophia, I believe Hapgood. Of course, she got out of it and started doing the whole psychic thing. So, we have to find the documentation in that linked to Atlantis. Well, to do so, we have to first get her help. And then we have to, which means finding out where there is a copy of the Lost Dialogues of Plato. And I still like this part because you go to down to, I think, to Mexico, after going to Iceland, to find out that somebody is, another scholar. In order to get it, you have to talk with a parrot. Because apparently the parrot knows the name of the book. I think it's something like the Hippocrates rhymes with Socrates. And you lead this one guy to one of the three keys to Atlantis. And the threes are basically three stones: the Sunstone, the Moonstone, and the World Stone. Well, once you find that, after you get the lost dialogues, because the lost dialogues have clues on how to use the stones. You then get to choose how you play the game. If you play it solo, using being smart, or your wits. If you go solo, fighting your way through everything, or you go as a team with Sophia. Which actually, I always would go with that path because it can be interesting. Each path, of course, involves you trying to solve things in a different way. And, well, in the one way, you have to pay attention to what you were doing in the previous screen and answer the questions correctly. And so, Sophia is, and we also get her to get, in her path, it's like you have her volunteer for a knife throwing act. She's the target. And this is, of course, to get the second stone you need and everything. And, of course, you got to find the Third Reich excavation site in the desert. And I still don't know if the term Effendi is a polite term or a secret stab at who you are when they say, "Ah, yes, Effendi." Honestly, I don't know about that. I'll have to look it up later. Well, after you find everything you need, you head off to Crete, where you again have some more puzzles lining up to find something you need. And eventually, you end up going into the labyrinth in Crete. No Minotaur, but there's Minotaur-type statues. And involving some more quick thinking, quick-witted thinking and everything. And, of course, using everything you can to find out more about how to open things. And, of course, once you get down into the nitty-gritty, yeah, the Third Reich catches up with you. They capture Sophia, or have captured Sophia. And so you must now get out of the labyrinth from the chamber you've been trapped in, and then board the U-boat. One of those few times where you're going to have some fisticuffs or something. And then you have to handle things where you can maneuver things and take care of, taking charge of the sub and somehow getting to Atlantis and rescuing Sophia. And then you go into Atlantis itself, where she gets caught by the Third Reich, and they get in and all that. And now you get into Atlantis itself. And Atlantis is set up in like three concentric rings, I could best say, before you reach the center. The first one, while it has a standard layout, your secret rooms and all that are mysteriously different. Like certain rooms change, and you have to traverse from certain room to certain room. There's only like about 2 set locations. Well, 3 set locations. So you're going to have to get, quote, some orichalcum together. You're going to have to get things together so you can progress. And eventually you're going to have to, quote, rescue Sophia. Now, all this time, though, Sophia goes on about, being one and being in communication with the spirit of Nurab Sal, who was one of the Atlantean rulers. He's not a nice guy. In fact, once you get through the outer maze and then go through the canal route, which is also circular, and open to the inner part of it, which is another circular chamber, you'll actually come across where Nurab Sal is, quote, his tomb room or something, get the scepter. This is actually a point where you can actually change the path of the game, regardless of what path you began with. Because you can leave Sophia possessed in there, or you can free her of the possession. I personally like freeing her of the possession, and actually that is more canon, since she shows up in the next title. That's how it works. But you make it through there by discovering certain details floating about. Some of them are a little bit random, so they can change from through to playthrough. And once you get through that, you get down really into the inner part of it, and you have to work your way through a very tricky section with some puzzling ways to get through, and also the diagram to start up the big machine in the center. A machine that can turn people into gods. And as a good scientist, well, we'll get to that, but like you have to go through the random door scenario, open door and go through door 1. Oh, this is where it leads me to advance. Okay, I can live with that. Door 2, that kind of thing. It's random. When you get through that part, you have to cross a pathway of lava and destroying spots. Where each step you take, a spot is destroyed. And it can be tedious. You won't be stranded. Because if you get stuck, you just make your way back to the first side and it resets it. And then you just have to try again. You're never going to die in this part. Or meet a terrible fate. And then you enter the center, where the, quote, God machine is. And of course, while you've been meandering around and all that, the Third Reich people has been basically stocking up on orichalcum. And the Lost Dialogues of Plato have a tenfold error, which is where in part why you get the idea that Atlantis is somewhere in the middle of the Mediterranean. Which, to be honest, I think is more logical anyhow. Anyhow, when you work your way through it, you have to pick the right choices in the conversation. I mean, the scientist, with the typical Third Reich mentality, thinks all that are not German are inferior. But of course, what do you use an inferior being for? Testing! So he wants to test the God Machine on Indy first. Of course, the soldier with him, uh, Kerner, I believe, because he's been a pain in the butt all through this game. He wants to go first. And he's not an inferior. He's not a superior being, I'll tell you that. Now, if you do things right, you will actually trick the scientist to be the first one to be the one to do it with the other way. I mean, the tenfold error says you need 10 beads of orichalcum, but what if it's actually one bead? Or what if it's actually 100 beads? And so he does that. And of course, afterwards, you see proof of Atlantis' existence, and it then quickly goes back under. Well, there we go. It's all gone. Which is, I guess, somewhat typical. You can't take the grand treasures with you. They have to be hidden away. And that actually, and this was actually this was a great game. A very great game. And there are a lot of people, and I think there's somewhere that says that this is actually officially the fourth adventure of Indiana Jones. If there had been a movie, this would have been it. And instead, what we got years later was the Kingdom of the Crystal Skulls, which I haven't seen, but it's been criticized a lot. Of course, there is a definite lack of snakes in this game. We all know how Indiana hates snakes. That's his one weakness. But it was actually a very good game. I enjoyed it. It does have replay value. It's like the other games. You can choose to replay it taking a different path. I don't know if they eliminate the choice if you replay it, like that. I would imagine they do, because let's face it. Well, no, they probably don't, because I don't know if they thought that far ahead to give you that option. Because not many games were set up to eliminate the choice if you've used it already. But it gave a good feel. I do think that the talkie version of it, the CD-ROM version of it, is superior to the non-talkie version because it really brings you a bit more into the game. I mean, yes, they didn't go with Harrison Ford to voice Indiana Jones. They probably didn't want to pay him because he was becoming a big star at that time. Not too bad for going from being a carpenter, I'll tell you that. Actually, that was from a time that he was doing a lot of films. But, this is all I'm going to say about Indiana Jones and the fate of Atlantis. It does set some things up for the next game in the quote sequence of these games. And it was actually a fun game. It actually had the charm of the first game, too. But as I said, that's all I'm going to say about it. I hope you've enjoyed listening to me talk about this game, and I hope you check out some of the other videos on the channel. As always, Rich Kale here on YouTube, Rich Gen X elsewhere. Bye all!